I'd simply followed the man as far as he ran into the darkness. I couldn't take a guess as to how far we'd run. It was already pitch black around us, and the only light I had to go on was the very faint lights on the road a little further down. It was so dark out. I hadn't noticed the darkness until just now. My vision was so good I could see the man's ugly hairline. I could have counted the pores on his head. It was only now that I realized how much crazy strength I'd mustered at that moment. Okay, so he's near a street, so he's not lost. Although, the chances of him burying the body in the hole he made might be hard. I went over to the streetlight. I looked up and down the road, desperately trying to figure out where I was. Oh no. This was the one road connecting Hinamizawa to the town. We were unbelievably far away from Satoku's house. Had the two of us really run so far a distance? My surprise at that was accompanied by the knowledge of the miraculous fact that, despite running so far and making so much noise, we hadn't come across anybody at all. There was a long way between here and the ambush location where I dug the hole. There was no way I could carry the body that far. Wait. Aside from that, the bike the man took here was still lying in the middle of that path. That would be an issue. The police could tell whose motorcycle it was by looking at the license plate. And they wouldn't just leave it at that. Thankfully, the corpse is in a dark forest. In terms of urgency, dealing with the bike would come first. And I wanted to get the shovel back from where I'd left it next to the hole. I shouldn't drag the body there. I would have to deal with it right here. Fortunately, the ground was like mud from the downpour, and was more sludgy here than where I was before. I might be able to dig a grave quickly here. Of course, my bicycle was still over where I'd left it too. It still wasn't over. A homicide had only been half of my goal. The other half would be just as important as the first. I would completely hide the body, not allowing a beginning to happen. I would erase the man like he'd never existed, and regain the peaceful times we had before. I bent my head backwards, and calmed my mind even further. The big water droplets struck my brow mercilessly. They were actually quite comfortable, and for a while I let my desire have its way. After confirming that I was sharp again, I started running through the rain. The motorcycle was in the grass at the roadside. Considering how it looked, pelted with rain and covered in mud, it actually seemed like it had been lying there for a very long time. The plan was to drop the motorcycle into the swamp. The swamp was a bit of a walk from here. I lifted the bike up. I didn't think it would be so heavy. I was a little surprised. But once I had it upright, it was fairly easy to roll it along. Still, pushing this thing all the way to the swamp was really not something I wanted to do. I could no longer ignore my exhaustion, and it warned me numerous times of how far away the swamp was. This motorcycle, I wonder if I could ride it well enough. Once I got it going, it would be basically the same as a bicycle. Wouldn't it get me to the swamp quickly? The plan suggested by my exhaustion. The anxiety at getting on a motorcycle for the first time withdrew. I turned the key, and then you just kick this pedal, right? Yeah! Yeah! Vroom! It's on! And then I gripped the handlebars, first the right, and then the left. Maybe I twisted them too much. The bike lurched and did a wheelie like an angry horse. I lost it for a second, but it was just a problem of how much torque to apply. Let's try that again. This time, slowly, gently. That time it went well. It was strange to be in a two-wheeled vehicle that would go even if I didn't pedal. Very odd, but I got used to it quickly. Mion once told me you could get a scooter license within a day, and she was clearly right. This was pretty easy. I needed to throw the metal bat into the swamp too, but I didn't know how I would pack the bat into the motorcycle. Without much other choice, I stuffed it into the back of my shirt, feeling like a ninja carrying a katana. If I put the tip down the seat of my pants and hunched over, it wouldn't fall out. I got back onto the bike and this time got it going without any difficulty. I carefully pressed the button labeled light, and a rather strong light came on, illuminating the way forward. I probably really shouldn't have turned it on, but I didn't really have any way of seeing at this point, and had zero confidence I could ride through this darkness. As the rain came down on me, I maintained a precarious balance and inched my way towards the swamp. Along the way, I ran across a few people who seemed to be returning from the festival, but none of them had any interest in me. They were either all soaked through with the rain and hurrying on their way home, or had their umbrellas low and their heads down. Yesterday I might have been wary of even these passerby, but right now it didn't seem to be much of a cause for concern. In fact, it would probably be less suspicious to be riding out in the open like this instead of sneaking around. More and more, though, I started to think of that idea as naive, brought on by my exhausted state. I climbed a steep hill. On a bike, the hill would have put me out of breath, but I just had to accelerate a bit to climb the entire thing. Motorcycles sure are convenient. For a moment its lights illuminated a sign before I passed by it. Onikafuchi Swamp. Good children do not play around here. Still, it wasn't like the way to the swamp is cordoned off by a metal fence or anything. Parents and teachers would get mad at you if they found out you were playing at the swamp. But some of the bad kids in my class apparently snuck out here sometimes to see the giant crayfish in the place. They talked before about how they'd go to the candy shop and buy some pickled squid, then just tie it to a fishing line and throw it, and all the crayfish would come running. Once I got to the bank, there was a tiny ritual shrine and traditional ropes on one of the trees. And as it swallowed the downpour whole, the blackened swamp had waited for me. If I slammed on the accelerator from the cliff-like stop I was on now, the thing would fly straight into the middle of the swamp. I had to be careful not to fall in with it. If I drowned and disappeared, man, what a stupid ghost story that would be. On the night of the Watanagashi, oh, see, and he would disappear. That would be a way to go, wouldn't it? Satoko's uncle's corpse was found in a thicket by the road leading to town, and Keiichi Maibara went missing. People would whisper that I'd been demoned away. The 5th year's curse would be a half-baked one. I got off the bike and twisted the accelerator as hard as I could. I let go just when it seemed like it would drag me forward. The bike shot off the cliff and was swallowed down into the swamp, leaving a far fainter splash than I'd imagined. Its surface was being pummeled by the downpour, and the muddy, filthy water was flowing into it. I couldn't even make out the motorbike I'd just thrown in there. It was pretty heavy after all. It would be quickly engulfed by the soft mud at the bottom of the swamp, and it would be pulled deeper and deeper until it reached hell itself. I felt no reluctance whatsoever in throwing the man's motorbike down to the land of the demons, but I did have a tinge of regret when I did it with Satoshi's bat. The muddy water washed off the gore sticking to it, and it sunk easily. I'd sort of shared today's events with Satoshi, so I wanted to give it a quiet place to stay. That's how I felt. I started to feel more like returning it to the locker from before so I could continue to keep watch over Satoko.
Satoshi, 俺、多分お前のこと誤解してた。
Satoshi listened quietly without nodding. Because he's a bat. I'm absolutely convinced now. You were the one who beat your aunt to death last year and saved Satoko. I always scorned you and called you a coward who ran away. But I was wrong. To the rest of the world, some deviant was behind that incident. But I know. That was something you did for her. And then you disappeared. You finally got back that piece, and lost it within days. So, I swear to you that I will live life to the fullest from now on. Live it enough for the both of us. I will live on as though this week, this day, never happened. But I will never forget the short time we shared together for as long as I live. I didn't know what expression Satoshi made as he listened, but as someone who had protected the same girl, I felt he had smiled and given me his blessing. And then my hand moved of its own accord, and the bat I had hesitated to throw away left my hands and flew through the air. It traveled its parabolic path, spinning all the while, and the swamp absorbed it without a sound. There weren't even any ripples when it hit the surface. That surface was tempestuous because of the downpour, and the bat was long gone. For a moment, I regretted having thrown it, but I realized that might have been what Satoshi had wanted.
そうだよな。俺はまだ感傷に浸る余裕なんかないんだよな。
I would return for my shovel, get on my bike, dig a hole to hide the body, and bury it. It seemed like a simple sequence of events, but I felt extremely exhausted, and I had to do it all tonight. Satoshi left me with the only advice that I needed to finish this up soon, then fell silent for eternity, and disappeared at the bottom of the demon's abyss. I returned to the path I had ambushed her uncle on. My bike was hidden, sleeping in the brush. I stood it back up. My whole body felt heavy, but I needed to finish by the end of the day, even if I had to whip myself to do it. Oh, I forgot something. I didn't just come here for my bike. The shovel was here too. Not good. I was zoning out. Every once in a while, if I let my guard down, my vision would almost go black. Pull yourself together, Keiichi Maibara. It's still not over. I went into the grove of trees and looked for the hole in which I'd hidden the shovel. Unfortunately, I'd hidden it deep in the forest, not wanting it to be seen. And now everything was black in the night, and I couldn't see anything anymore. I reawakened my fading consciousness. Oh. The spooky music again. And realized just how big this annoyance really was.
おい、マジかよ。
The sweat the rain washed away before came back up to my skin. Deep, deep in the forest where the street lights could never reach. The fact that it would be so pitch black had been completely uncalculated. With this much darkness, even if I'd been able to kill him right away like I'd planned, I don't know if I still could have buried him without a problem. What should I do? I simply couldn't find the shovel tonight. If I forced myself to go deep into the forest, I'd lose even my sense of direction, and I might actually get lost in there. That might have been an exaggeration, but it'd be possible I'd trip over a tree root and sprain a muscle. Oh, right. My house's storage room. There was another shovel there, the same fold-up kind. Couldn't I go back to the house, get the shovel, and give up on finding the shovel tonight? It's not as though the name Maibara is written on the shovel. But it seemed like an unusual item from an import variety store made in another country, so I didn't want to leave that shovel here. But in this darkness, I couldn't do anything. I should give up and go back to the storage room. And there was an electric lantern in there. If I use that for light, I could look for it. I kind of wonder why Keiichi didn't, like... I mean, I guess this is sort of demonstrating that he didn't fully think over the whole plan. But I feel like the darkness should have been something in his plan. But then again, you know, first-time murderer, you can't catch everything, am I right? It was so extremely dark. Could I light the way with just the lantern? The light of the lantern in this dark night. I couldn't discard the possibility of it drawing eyes. And I doubted if I could find the shovel with the lantern's feeble light. Besides, I left the body there for a pretty long time already. My sense of fear, dulled through the excessive exhaustion, finally reared its ugly head. Anyway, for now the most important thing was to hide the body. The shovel being found wouldn't be a big deal. But a corpse? If they found that, I'd share the same fate as Satoshi. First, I'd go back to the storage room at home. Then I'd get the lantern. Now that it's gotten this dark, I might still need light to dig a hole for the body too. And I'd get the other shovel. And then I'd deal with the body first thing. Once that was done, I'd come back here, find the shovel, and bring it back. I had to do at least that much. But I was so tired. But complaining was getting me nowhere. If I started getting complacent now, everything will have been for naught. At some point I'd sat down. I gritted my teeth and endured, lifting my heavy hips. The night was young. Of all the nights I'd experienced, none had ever been this long. When would it all end? The night was young. So my question is, what are your parents going to say? Like, you're going to come back. You're going to sneak into the storehouse. Sure enough, that's whatever. You probably won't notice you, but when you finally do get back, your parents are going to be like, what the heck happened? You're soaking wet. There might be like a giant blood stain on your shirt somewhere, I don't know. Very suspicious stuff. I don't know why I turned off the fan. It's really hot in here. Hold on. That's what it was. My air conditioner wasn't on. Makes a lot more sense now. I usually turn it off when I go to work because it's, you know, uses up a lot of energy for no one being here. The lights at home were dazzlingly bright. Suddenly they reminded me of how hungry I was. I checked the clock and saw that it was almost 7. Oh, okay, 7. That's not too bad. Though, you know, I wonder exactly where everyone, like, where your parents would expect you to be when it's raining this hard. Surely heading on the way home, right? Especially because the festival's outdoors. I thought for sure it was 2 or 3 in the morning already. I was surprised at how messed up my biological clock had gotten just from this one night. There was a warm light coming from the curtains in the living room window. The worlds between here and what was beyond those curtains were so different. If only that man hadn't shown up, I would have been in that light. I'd still be excited from the festival, and I'd be talking to my parents about how much fun I had with all my friends. And then, even though they made a hot meal for me, I would have eaten way too much of the stalls, barely eaten any of it, and gone back to my room. No doubt I'd crawl into my futon and easily let myself fall asleep. But right now, I was completely different. There wasn't a single ember of warmth from those weak streetlights. Right now, I was unconnected to any time spent with my family, and there was neither warm food nor the time to allow myself to sleep. My body exposed to the cold rain, I knew that I simply had to spur myself on to accomplish what I must. I realized how timid, how cowardly I was becoming. For what reason did I need to kill someone, even if it felt this terrible? I'd lost sight of my purpose. I'd selected the fastest, most fundamental way of saving Satoko, and executed it without hesitation. That man was dead. He was gone. he would never ever hurt Satoko again. We all thought frantically for days on end about Satoko's problem, and finally with no options we gave up. And I'd solved it in one night. By myself, without anyone's help. Right about now, Satoko would be making dinner for her uncle, despite not knowing when he'd return, and she might be spending the night trembling in fear of whether he'd yell at her for how it tasted. But her uncle wouldn't come home. She wouldn't have to fear his wrath, nor let him make her feel sad. I see. I did it. I successfully saved Satoko. All I'd been thinking about for a long time was killing that man, and I'd forgotten the feeling that it was actually all to save her.
そっか
Honey, there's a weird man laughing in the front yard. I did something good. That's right. I did something good, didn't I? I felt hot tears coming from my eyes. And that's when I first realized that the exhaustion I'd been feeling was actually guilt. The blade of guilt, for a while now, had just been scraping away with its tip, hurting my heart. It hurt so bad I couldn't stand it. It was throbbing painfully. It hurt so much. It was so painful that I cried. I cried tears of joy at saving Satoko. I didn't know why, really, anymore. I just cried. My tears fell and fell. As I stood there for a while, coming to terms with those warm tears, my heart was comforted a little. Alright, Keiichi, my para. That's enough. There's nothing to regret or feel ashamed about. Both my body and mind were thoroughly exhausted, and that was a fact. It was only natural I couldn't feel anything. Even tomorrow, and the day after that, I might not be able to feel anything for a while. But there was one thing that was true. There was the undisputable fact that I had saved Satoko. One day we would surely be rewarded. One day, I would be proud of how distressing an enterprise I had undertaken to get Satoko's smile back. And so that I could wait for that day, I had to put the finishing touches on this night. If I'd left it undone, everything I'd accomplished today would be for naught. I looked back up at the sky, which didn't look like it would stop raining anytime soon. Then, I rubbed my eyes and summoned forth energy from my core again. How long did I plan on spacing out? This isn't the time for daydreaming. Someone could find that corpse this very moment. That pessimistic thought was proof the very nature or natural emotion of fear had returned to me. As I allowed the fear to spur me onwards, I went to look for the other shovel and the lantern inside the storage room. It was fortunate. I remembered what it looked like around the streetlight the body was near. With how dark it was quite possible I wouldn't have been able to look for it either. I didn't realize that when I left the place, so the idea of memorizing the spot hadn't even crossed my mind. And that's why I had to call it fortunate that I managed to get back to the body like this. The corpse is now located in a big muddy puddle. Half of the thing had already sunk into the swamp-like pool of water. I only realized afterwards, but there was an unused irrigation channel right nearby clogged with fallen leaves and dirt, and there was rainwater flowing in from there. My shoes had been awash with water for a long time now, so without any hesitation I stepped into the puddle. The whole muddy stream started flowing back, luckily. I couldn't leave any slight traces, like bloodstains. The rain was like a blessing from heaven. I checked around me, paying very close attention, then turned off the lantern. It became pitch black, but my eyes got used to the darkness in a few moments, and once I managed to reach the streetlight on the other side, I was able to make out even faint lights. I stuck the shovel into the puddle right next to the corpse. The ground is even looser here than I thought, and the shovel's tip easily slid inside it. I had to hurry and dig. If I took too much time, I might lose my energy and strength again. It felt almost like digging a hole in the sand at the beach. It was easy to dig, but no matter what, the muddy water kept flowing in, covering the hole. The digging wasn't going as well as I'd hoped. I dug, and the water would go in, so I couldn't get a sense of how deep it was. The only way for me to measure it was to bury my own foot in the mud. I'm digging just fine. It's alright, don't be disheartened. Dig, dig, dig. Occasionally a car would come by on the road, and I'd hurry to hide myself in the trees. Everyone was only passing through. They wouldn't have their eyes peeled in this kind of darkness. I understood it logically, but I still couldn't help but hide. What I was really scared of wasn't quite that one of those cars would coincidentally happen to witness me here. It was that the distance I could spot cars from was getting gradually shorter. At first I noticed the splashing sounds from really far away as the cars drove through them. I started noticing them less and less, and with the car that just passed by, I didn't notice it until its headlights were upon me. I felt my senses growing duller by the second. If someone were to take a peek in secret, as I was burying the body at the worst possible time, maybe I wouldn't even notice. The moment I thought that, I took a good look all around me. I roused all my half-asleep senses and searched for signs of presence nearby. What if I found out someone was spying on me from the trees? A carnivorous feeling snarled at me, glaring. If there was, then I would dig another hole. I'd come this far already. In order to achieve perfection, I didn't care how much more I had to pay. I didn't know what kind of face I was making at the time, but it was definitely a fervently glaring one. Oh, scary Keiichi noises. My five senses reached the conclusion that nobody was present. I didn't breathe a sigh of relief. How long had I been digging this mud out of here? It was deep enough for it to go up to my knees. Maybe this was enough. Maybe I'd throw the corpse in as a test. I swallowed, getting my breathing under control. Despite how much I'd beaten him, I was afraid of touching the corpse. So instead, I dragged it by the feet to the hole. It took more than just a waggle and a tug to do it. But of course it did. Considering this man's weight, it was easily 80 kilograms. And just out of curiosity, I want to convert that to freedom units, so my small mind understands. 80 kilos to pounds is 176 pounds. Alright. Say an average weight of an adult male. Maybe a little lighter, but more or less. I rallied all my strength and dragged him. At this point, my groundless fears that he might suddenly start moving again had vanished long ago. His body fit perfectly into the muddy hole. It was more than deep enough. Alright, let's bury him. Quickly, quickly, quickly. If I did a perfect job of burying it here, everything would be over. I would hide it in the hole, and none of this would have ever happened. When I realized I only had a little farther to go to finish everything, I was racked with pointless anxiety, like I was in a race against time. It was like I was absorbed in a delusion, that if I didn't bury the body quickly, it might come back to life. In any case, in a great rush, I poured mud and dirt into the hole. If I didn't work efficiently, someone might find me here. Until now, I figured if someone saw, I'd just kill them. But not anymore. I was arrested with such absolute fear that if someone saw me, it would all be over. As I finished the work off, it was a total mess. splish, splash, squish, squash. I drew the surface of the shovel across the ground, trying to make it flat. I was completely covered in mud at that point. The rain washed the mud off my body, but not off my now blackened clothing. My body and mind were caked with panic, with fear, with rain and sweat and mud. My shoulders heaving. I threw down the shovel and sat down in the mud. I was so exhausted that I wanted to lie down right here and sleep. It was over. This time. For real. It was over. The man was now in the bottom of the wet dirt. Right this moment there were traces that this place had been dug up, but the rain and flowing muddy water would completely cover it all within moments. Yes, it was over. I want to hear like Keiichi's crazy raving rants here. And then I fell over backwards, face up in the mud. Raindrops pelted my face without mercy, but I didn't care. After staying there for a while, resting my mind, I got up again. It was over. So let's go home. You already buried the whole thing. So now it's like it never happened. It never happened. So there's no reason for me to stay out here and get rained on. I wobbled to my feet. I wouldn't use the shovel anymore. I considered disassembling it, but I didn't have the strength in my absolute exhaustion. I didn't really need to take it apart anyway. Dragging the shovel behind me, I headed towards the light. I stood up my bike. It had been laying in the grass by the road. I didn't know how I was going to get the still assembled shovel into the front basket. I put the shovel down the back of my shirt like I'd done with the baseball bat. Unlike the bat, the corner of it was on my back, making it very painful. Plus, if I relaxed my posture even a little, it would fall out behind me. I ended up having to carry the shovel in my left hand and ride my bike using only my right hand. Not only was I in a state of total exhaustion, this was a downpour. One hand on the handlebars. I was swaying to and fro like a drunk. But I didn't care. Even swaying like this, I got a little closer to home every time I pedaled. I saw two lights swing slowly in front of me. The car was approaching. Oh no, I need to get out of the way. From far away in the shadows of the darkness, a car appeared. Its dazzling lights washed over me. The driver made a short honk of the horn to inform me I was in the middle of the road. I have to get out of the way. I kept telling myself that. But not only was I riding one-handed, I was exhausted, so I couldn't do anything. Wobble, 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 wobble. I meandered about, not going to the right or the left. Alright, this is suspicious, Keiichi. I'm just telling you right here. The driver decided to swerve out of the way right in front of me, and without lowering its speed much, steadily came towards me. Its outline grew larger in my vision. I'm telling myself again I really needed to get out of the way. I jerked the handlebars in one direction and lost my balance, and fell over, bike and all. My whole body splayed out, and one foot got caught in the bike. This was seriously bad. My drowsiness quickly vanished, and just as a cold sweat broke out of my skin, the driver recklessly spun the wheel to the left, made a counterclockwise U-turn, and came right up to me and stopped. The driver's seat door opened, and the driver came out, and the driver is... You idiot, what are you doing here? I was pretty sure someone would yell at me like that. Oh, it's Takano! I thought it was going to be Oishi. Although I feel like Takano's not the best person for us to try to get away with a murder around. It was a woman's voice, and one I knew. I lifted my face off the ground and looked at her.